Okay, I want to start with a question that I think every single person listening to this has felt at some point, probably, I don't know, in the last 24 hours.
For sure.
You consume something, a podcast, a really dense article, maybe a YouTube video essay, and in the moment, you're like, yes, this is it. This is profound. I understand the universe.
You're nodding along, you feel smarter, you feel expanded.
Yeah.
And then maybe 3 days later, you are at dinner with friends and you try to explain that profound thing. And what happens?
You hit a wall, a complete brick wall. You remember the feeling of knowing it, but the actual details, the stats, the nuance, it's just gone. It's like trying to grab smoke.
Exactly. You're sitting there stuttering, saying, no, seriously, it was really smart. You had to be there, but you just look like you don't know what you're talking about.
Worst feeling.
Now, imagine that feeling, but scale it up to a terrifying degree. Imagine you aren't just a consumer of information, but a creator.
Yeah.
You have created over 2,700 videos, which is a staggering number, by the way. Just think about that. 2,700 distinct pieces of media.
Right. Songs, podcasts, deep dives into philosophy, gender theory, politics, the history of memes. I mean, you have built this massive, sprawling library of content. But there is a catch.
There's always a catch.
You can't remember it. Not all of it. In fact, you might not even remember making some of it.
Which, if we are being, biologically honest, is completely normal.
Yeah.
That is an enormous amount of information for one human primate brain to hold. We weren't evolved to maintain a database of 2,700 complex files in our heads.
Exactly. But here's where the tension starts. And this is the story we are diving into today. To manage all of this, you use tools. You use AI. You use a digital database, what the productivity nerds call a second brain, to keep track of your thoughts, your research, your lyrics. You build a system so you don't have to remember.
A system that is explicitly for forgetting, in a way.
Precisely.
Right.
But because you are using tools to manage this volume, and because you can't instantly recite every single fact from video number 405 when someone puts a microphone in your face, people start getting suspicious.
Right. The audience starts asking questions. They look at this massive output and they say, wait a minute, did you actually write this?
Yeah.
Do you actually know this, or is this just slop?
Slop. That is the word of the moment, isn't it?
It is the insult of the AI age. It's so dismissive.
Today we are doing a deep dive into the story of a specific creator named Max of all trades. But as always, we aren't just talking about Max. We are using his very specific, very modern crisis to unpack something that affects all of us. We are looking at the ethics and the psychology of the second brain.
It is a fascinating case study because it forces us to ask a very fundamental and, frankly, pretty uncomfortable question.
Yeah.
Is using technology to offload our memory a shortcut that erodes our intelligence? Is it cheating? Is it making us dumber?
Or,
in a world that is absolutely drowning in information, is it actually load-bearing infrastructure that keeps us from going insane?
that is the core conflict. It's a battle between internal optimization, keeping your own brain healthy and functional, and external signaling, proving to the world that you're smart by performing memory tricks.
And the source material we are working with today is really unique. This isn't a news article or a scientific paper. It is a deep, reflective dialogue, a series of notes and a meta-analysis exploring the ethics of a second brain. It covers personal anxieties, societal expectations, and this really tricky philosophical definition of what authenticity actually means now that machines can think with us.
So settle in. We are going to exclude some myths about how your memory works. We're going to argue about whether AI makes you a fraud. And we're going to talk about why feeling slow might actually mean you're being smart.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's start with that accusation I mentioned. Slop. It's such a visceral word. It sounds gross. It sounds like pig feed.
It does. It implies something formless, mass-produced, low value, something without care.
In the source material, Max, our case study creator, talks about this specific fear. He has this channel, Max of all trades, with 2,700 videos. And there is this external perception floating around the internet that because there is so much of it, and because he openly uses AI to assist in the process, it must be low quality. It must be slop.
Right. And we need to define what people usually mean by slop in the AI context. They usually mean content that was generated by a prompt, barely read by a human, and just shoveled onto the internet to game an algorithm or make ad revenue.
It's content without a soul.
It's content without intent beyond just existing.
But Max pushes back on this hard, and his rebuttal is fascinating. He argues that what he is building isn't content production in the influencer sense. He's not trying to Mr. Beast. He says he is building a personal knowledge archive.
A distillation engine.
Yeah, a distillation engine. Explain the difference there. Because to a viewer, a video is a video. Why does the intent matter so much?
Well, think about the direction of the flow. Content creation is often about output. It's about pushing things out to get attention, to get views. A personal knowledge archive is about input and processing.
So it's for him, not for us.
Primarily, yes. It's about survival. It's about taking the massive tsunami of information we deal with every day, news, books, conversations, random thoughts, and putting it somewhere safe so it doesn't crush you.
It's a defense mechanism.
Precisely. Max is saying, I create these videos and these entries not just to get likes, but to process my own life, to figure out what I think.
The source uses an analogy here that I think we need to spend some real time on because it completely changed how I visualize my own brain. It's the apartment analogy.
Oh, this is a great visual. I love this one. It's so clarifying.
Okay, so walk us through this. The source asks us to imagine our mind, specifically our working memory, as an apartment.
Right. So you live in an apartment. It has finite square footage. You have a living room, a kitchen, maybe a bedroom. You have a certain amount of wall space for art, and you've got a certain number of bookshelves for books. This represents your working memory and your immediate active identity.
Okay, so this is where I live. This is where I have conversations. This is my me space.
Yes. Now imagine you are someone like Max, or frankly anyone who loves to learn. You are constantly bringing new things into the apartment. You read a book on Roman history. That's a box of stuff. You listen to a podcast on quantum mechanics. Another box. You have a deep thought about your childhood. Another box.
And if I try to keep all of that in the apartment?
You become a hoarder. It's that simple. If you insist on keeping every thought, every fact, and every piece of media you've ever consumed right there in your living room, the apartment becomes unlivable. You can't move, you can't breathe.
You certainly can't have guests over.
No, because there are stacks of newspapers reaching the ceiling like those scary TLC shows.
And crucially, you can't think. There is no space to actually connect ideas or have a new one.
Exactly. So in this analogy, the second brain, the digital database, the AI tools, the archive, that is the self-storage unit down the street.
The self-storage unit, I love that.
It's a dedicated, secure space where you put the things that matter to you, but that you don't need to be tripping over while you're trying to make breakfast.
I like this distinction because the stuff in the storage unit isn't trash. It's not the dump. This isn't stuff you're throwing away.
No, it's valuable. That's why you kept it. That's why you're paying for the unit. You might need that box of Roman history facts next year for a project. You might need those lyrics you wrote in 2019, but you don't need them in your living room right now.
So the goal of the second brain isn't to make you look like a genius who knows everything. It's to keep your mental apartment clean enough to live in.
It allows the creator to breathe. It resolves the information overload issue by outsourcing the storage. It keeps the working space clean.
But here's where the tension comes in, and Max talks about this vividly. The problem is that the audience doesn't see the apartment. They can't see his clean living room.
No, all they see is the storage unit. They see the 2,700 videos, and they assume that Max lives in the storage unit.
Or even worse, they expect him to have the entire contents of that massive storage unit crammed into his tiny apartment, instantly accessible at all times.
Yes, that's it. Exactly.
They meet him and say, hey, tell me about that specific point you made in video 4,402 regarding the socioeconomic impact of memes. And when he doesn't know it instantly, when he has to, pause and think.
They think he's a fraud. They think he never really knew it in the first place.
That is the category error. And the source breaks this down using a computer metaphor that I think really clarifies the mechanics of why this feels so bad. We have to talk about RAM versus the hard drive?
Okay, I'm not a tech wizard, so let's unpack this for the layperson. What is the difference, and why does it matter for our brains?
So every computer has two main types of memory. You have your hard drive, or an SSD these days, which is your storage. That is where you keep your photos from 10 years ago, your documents, your archives. It is massive. It can hold terabytes of data.
But getting information out of it takes a split second. It's for retrieval. It's long-term storage.
Okay. And RAM?
RAM stands for Random Access Memory. This is your working memory. It is what the computer is using right now to run the program you are looking at. It's very, very fast, but it is very, very small compared to the hard drive.
And if you have too many tabs open in your browser, what happens?
The computer slows down to a crawl, you get the spinning beach ball of death, the fan starts screaming.
Exactly. That is fried RAM. You have exceeded the capacity of the working memory.
So applying this to Max, or to us, at that dinner party,
The slop allegation, or the fraud allegation, comes from people expecting a creator to hold storage levels of information in their RAM.
they want you to have terabytes of data ready to go in your active working memory. They want you to have the whole storage unit in your apartment.
Which is biologically impossible. And Max's insight here is crucial. He says, and I'm quoting, "If I did memorize it all, it would defeat the purpose of the second brain."
Wait, say that again? That sounds like a paradox.
If I did memorize it all, it would defeat the purpose of the second brain.
I mean, he's right. If you have to memorize everything you write down, why write it down? The whole point of the storage unit is so you don't have to keep it in the apartment.
Think about it. We don't feel this pressure with other tools. That's what's so strange.
That's true. I was
Yeah.
just thinking about my phone. I don't feel like a fraud because I haven't memorized every single phone number in my contacts list.
Right. Imagine if someone said, "Oh, you call your mother, prove it. What's her number right now?" And you checked your phone and they said, "Aha, you're a fake son. You don't even know the number."
That would be insane. It would be
Exact-
completely absurd.
Or think about GPS. You don't memorize the map of the entire city before you leave the house. You trust the tool to guide you turn by turn.
You don't feel pressure to memorize your Google Docs or your entire email archive. You just need the confidence that the data is there when you need to search for it.
But with thought or intelligence, it feels different. It feels like a moral failing because we tie memory so tightly to smarts. If I can't remember the fact, I feel dumb.
Exactly. We had this cultural hangover from the era before the internet, before search engines, where being smart literally meant having a lot of facts in your head. That was the primary signal.
But that definition is completely outdated. It's obsolete.
And this leads to a very real physical sensation that Max describes. He says that now that he has this massive archive, this huge storage unit, he feels slower in conversation.
Mhm.
He says, the more information I have, the slower my mind feels at gathering the information.
This is a terrifying feeling for a smart person. I mean, you feel like you're losing your edge, like your brain is breaking.
I've felt this. I'll be trying to make a point, and I know I have a perfect example somewhere in my brain, but I can't find it, so I just pause. And the silence stretches out. And I feel like an idiot.
But here's where the expert analysis in the source flips the script. It argues that this slowness isn't a decline in intelligence. It isn't that you are getting dumber or aging. It is a shift in processing architecture.
Okay, make me feel better about my brain lag. How is it a shift? What does that mean?
Think about recall versus routing. If you only know 3 facts about a topic, let's say 3 facts about the Civil War, you can spit them out instantly. Bang, bang, bang. Fast recall. Why?
Because your brain only has to scan a tiny list. It's a very short search query.
Small list, fast search. Exactly. But Max has a graph of interlinked concepts. He has thousands of nodes of information on gender, politics, culture, history. When you ask him a question, his brain isn't searching a list of 3 items.
It's evaluating a complex, interconnected web, a whole network.
So the lag isn't emptiness, it's traffic. It's a complex search query running in the background.
It's query latency. He has to route through a much larger database.
Right.
His brain is doing more work, not less.
But it's not just the search time, right? The source talks about something else, something called the check process.
Yes, this is the ethical side of the lag. This is so important. When you were discussing nuanced topics, and Max covers heavy stuff like identity, politics, religion, your brain isn't just looking for a fact. It is running background checks.
Like a lawyer proofreading a contract in real time.
Exactly. His brain is asking, which framing is fair here? Am I being performative or am I being honest? What harm could this phrasing cause? Am I oversimplifying this complex issue? Does this contradict what I said 3 years ago?
Wow, that takes time. It takes a lot of processing power in your RAM.
It takes latency. And the source argues, and I really want listeners to internalize this, that latency does not equal incompetence. It is often the cost of intellectual honesty.
The cost of intellectual honesty. That is such a good phrase. It reframes the entire feeling.
Speed is not the same thing as clarity. In fact, in a complex world, speed is often a sign that you aren't thinking. If you have an instant hot take opinion on everything, you probably aren't running those background checks. You're just pulling from a short, simple list.
So the pause, let me think about that. That is actually the sound of a system working correctly. It's the sound of a responsible mind at work.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
But it creates this massive internal conflict. The source identifies two modes that are constantly fighting in the creator's brain: the archivist and the conversationalist.
I feel like these are two people living in my head who hate each other. Break them down for me.
Okay, so mode A is the archivist. This mode is exhaustive. It wants to be precise. It loves connections and footnotes. It tolerates ambiguity. It wants to sit in a library for 3 days and figure out the absolute nuanced truth.
The academic, the researcher.
Exactly. And mode B.
Mode B is the conversational human. This mode is at the dinner party. It is time-bounded. You can't pause for 5 minutes to think. It's socially responsive. It is vulnerable to ego. It wants to be liked. It wants to be funny. It needs flow. It needs to be quick.
And Max is trying to be both at the same time. He's trying to access the deep, slow, exhaustive archive while maintaining the snappy, fast, light conversation.
And that is what causes the fried RAM effect. It's like trying to run a huge, complex video game on a 10-year-old laptop.
Trying to run the archivist software, which is heavy and slow on the conversationalist hardware, which needs to be fast and light, causes a crash. It is mentally exhausting. It feels awful.
So what's the fix? Because we can't just stop talking to people. We have to exist in the world.
The source offers a really beautiful reframe, a new analogy, the cursor.
The cursor. Okay, I'm visualizing the little blinking line on my screen, the I-beam.
Right. The idea is you are not the archive. You are the cursor.
Okay. What does that mean in practice?
The channel, the database, the second brain, the 2,700 videos, that is the information. That is the text on the page. You, the human consciousness, are the pointer that orients within it. You are the navigator.
How does that change how I talk at a party?
It changes the goal. In a conversation, your goal shouldn't be total recall of the text. It shouldn't be to recite the book from memory. It should be orientation. You need to know where the information lives, how to point to it, how to navigate the ideas. You don't need to be the hard drive itself.
So instead of trying to download the entire file to my brain instantly, I just need to know the file path.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I know exactly what I said in video 4,402, and here's a verbatim quote, you say, I explored that tension. The core of it is roughly about X, but the nuance is really deep, and I have it mapped out in the archive. I can send you the link later.
You retrieve the handle of the information, not the entire file. You just need to know how to grab it.
Yes. You are the librarian, not the book. You know the card catalog. You know which aisle the information is in.
That feels like such a relief. Being a librarian sounds doable. Being the entire Library of Congress sounds impossible.
It is impossible. But, and here's the rub, the world doesn't always want a librarian. They want a star. They want a performer.
The Netflix.
The Netflix trap. That's what the source calls it.
Let's talk about this, because this is where the external pressure just completely crushes the internal logic. Max talks about this disconnect. He views his work as a hobby. It's self-therapy, it's exploration, it's his messy sketchbook.
Right, it's for him.
But because it is public and because AI helps him produce it at a high volume, the audience gets confused.
It is a profound disconnect in expectations. Think about what we consume every day. We watch these incredibly polished Netflix documentaries. We listen to highly produced podcasts like This American Life. We read best-selling nonfiction books.
Right. Things made by huge teams.
Those products are created by teams of hundreds. You have researchers, fact-checkers, editors, sub-editors, ghostwriters, producers, legal teams. The result is something polished, finished, and defensive. It is bulletproof. They've thought of every angle.
And Max is just one guy in his room with a database and a chatbot.
Exactly. He is producing a public diary. But when an audience sees a video essay on YouTube with good lighting and a serious title, they judge it by the standards of a commercial product.
They are confusing process, which is messy, evolving, conflicting, and honest, with product, which is finished and consistent.
And that's a really dangerous confusion for a creator's mental health.
And this spills over into how people treat him. Max describes this grilling sensation. He calls it the interview trap.
I think we've all seen this happen. You see an author on a talk show.
Yeah, and they are so smooth. They have the perfect anecdote for every question. They have the perfect quip.
That's because it's rehearsed. It is scoped. Those interviews are curated to sell a narrative of expertise. We are used to seeing people who have their talking points down cold. We associate that smoothness with authority and intelligence.
So when Max hesitates or says, I need to check my notes, or says, I don't remember exactly,
to the audience, that looks like failure. Unscripted expertise looks messy. Unscripted thinking looks full of holes. But in an AI world where people are already deeply suspicious, that messiness triggers verification anxiety.
Verification anxiety, that's another great
The
term.
questions aren't just curious anymore, they become audits.
Hmm.
Do you really understand this, or did the AI write it for you? Is this you or the machine? It becomes a cross-examination of his authorship. Every conversation is a potential deposition.
Max actually says something that really stuck with me. He worries that outsourcing his memory feels anti-human.
It cuts deep, that fear. It's a very common one.
It really does. Like, if I'm not doing the remembering, am I still the human in the equation? If I'm just the cursor, is that enough? Am I just an operator for a machine?
It is a valid fear, but I want to challenge it. The source argues, and I completely agree, that humans have always outsourced cognition. We are the species that offloads thinking onto the environment.
What do you mean by that?
Look at a map. A map is outsourced spatial reasoning. You don't have to hold the geography of the entire world in your head because we drew it on paper. Look at a book. That is outsourced memory. Look at a calculator. That is outsourced computation.
Even language, right? I didn't invent the word philosophy. I'm using a tool someone else made to hold a concept.
Exactly. We are cyborgs. We have been since we picked up a stick and used it as a lever. What feels different now is that the outsourcing is interactive and visible, and it touches on meaning, not just math or geography. It feels closer to our soul.
It feels like it's touching the part that's supposed to be us.
Right. But the source argues this isn't anti-human. It is post-burnout human.
Post-burnout human.
I love that term. Unpack it for me. It means choosing selective engagement. It means admitting that you cannot be on all the time. You cannot hold the weight of the world, the history of politics, and the nuance of every debate in your working memory constantly.
You'll burn out. You literally will.
You will crumble. The human brain is not designed for the modern information environment. Using its second brain to hold that weight for you allows you to be human in other ways, to rest, to be present with your family, to be compassionate, to play with your kids.
So it's not laziness. It's preservation. It's a strategy for sanity.
It is load-bearing infrastructure for a complex world.
Okay, I'm with you on the preservation aspect. That makes total sense. But I have to play devil's advocate here. I have to be the skeptic because we are kind of dancing around the big, scary topic, the ethics.
The elephant in the room. Is it right? Is it wrong?
Max isn't just worried about looking dumb. He is worried about doing something wrong. He is worried that using AI to help him think or write is deceptive. And honestly, I get it. If a student used AI to write a paper, we'd call it cheating.
We would.
If a journalist used AI to write an article and didn't say so, we'd call it plagiarism. How is this different? Where is the line?
It is the critical question. And the source material actually spends a lot of time steel-manning these criticisms. It doesn't dismiss them. It lists 4 main concerns that are very real and that we have to take seriously.
Let's hear them. Let's lay them out.
First, deceptive authorship. This is what you just said. Misleading others about how much effort or skill went into the work. Second, erosion of trust. If we can't tell what is human, we become cynical about everything.
We just assume everyone is a bot, everything is fake.
Exactly. Third is unfair comparison. This is the steroids in sports argument. If Max uses AI to produce 10 times as much as another creator who's doing it all natural, it feels like an unfair advantage. It creates status anxiety.
Right.
And finally, cognitive atrophy, the big one. The fear that if we outsource thinking, our brains will turn to mush, the Wall-E future.
Those are strong arguments, especially the atrophy one. I mean, it's a real thing. If I use GPS all the time, I forget how to navigate my own city. If I use a second brain, do I forget how to think?
So how does the source defend against these? The rebuttal centers on 2 things: intent and the definition of thinking.
Go on.
First, on deception. Deception requires an intent to mislead. Max uses AI as a thinking partner or a referee. He isn't asking it to write the script and then stamping his name on it.
So he's not saying, write me an essay on Kant from scratch.
No. He's saying, here are my jumbled, messy thoughts on Kant. Where am I wrong? What am I missing? Argue with me. Be my sparring partner.
It's augmentation, not replacement.
And that addresses the atrophy argument too. Cognitive atrophy happens when you replace the struggle of thinking with an easy answer. You ask the bot for the answer, you copy-paste, you learn nothing, your brain gets smooth, there's no cognitive friction.
But Max says he's working harder.
He is doing active cognition. He is arguing with the bot. He is comparing perspectives. He is governing his emotions when it challenges him. He is synthesizing. That is still work. In fact, it's often harder work. It's just higher level work. It's management and strategy, not rote memorization or basic composition.
Okay, that makes sense for atrophy. But what about the unfair advantage or the erosion of trust? Even if his intent is good, isn't he still polluting the water for everyone else?
This is where the source introduces a framework called proportional ethics, or a harm calculation. I found this really useful.
I like this part. It's basically math for morality. It's a cost-benefit analysis.
It is. You have to weigh the harm to self against the harm to others.
So in Max's case, what is the harm to self if he doesn't use these tools?
If Max doesn't use the second brain, burnout, anxiety, rumination, he stops creating, he potentially loses his mental health. The source is very clear. The cost of not offloading is high for him. It's a cognitive and emotional burden he can't carry.
And the harm to others?
In this specific context, where it's a hobbyist reflective channel, not a medical journal or a news report, the harm to others is mostly indirect confusion. Maybe they feel uncomfortable with the new norms. Maybe they're cynical. Maybe it makes them feel insecure about their own output.
So it's my mental breakdown versus your confusion about my process.
Right, and the source concludes that protecting your own sanity, putting on your own oxygen mask first, is an ethical priority over managing a stranger's hypothetical confusion about your creative process.
That's a bold stance. But I guess if the alternative is silence or a breakdown, the slop is preferable.
And there is a paradox here that Max talks about, the safe space paradox. He wants to create a space that is welcoming, but also intellectually stimulating. And he doesn't want to make people feel inferior.
Which sounds nice. I mean, who doesn't want that? I want to be smart, but also nice.
But the source points out that is actually a really hard constraint. It's almost impossible. Psychological safety plus cognitive challenge plus moral humility. Usually you only get two of the three.
Why is that?
Well, if you want safety, you usually sacrifice challenge. You keep things simple so nobody gets upset or feels dumb. If you want challenge, people often feel unsafe or inferior because they don't understand. To do all three requires a very specific, careful pacing.
You have to be slow. You have to use caveats. You have to constantly say, I might be wrong about this, but, or this is just my take.
And doing that in live conversation while accessing a massive database, while trying to be entertaining.
It is taxing. It's the fried ram again. It's hard to constantly say, well, on the one hand X, but on the other hand Y, and I want to be careful not to offend Z. That's not a conversation. That's a legal document.
Right. It's exhausting.
So let's get practical, because we have listeners right now who are probably thinking, okay, I use AI, I use notes apps, I feel this pressure, what do I do?
The advice in the source was surprising to me. I thought it would be, just be transparent, put a disclaimer on everything, warn the audience.
Me too. Warning, AI was used in the creation of this email.
The source actually advises against leading with disclaimers.
Really? Why? That feels so counterintuitive. Isn't honesty the best policy?
Honesty, yes. But disclaimers trigger a credibility trial.
Explain that phrase, a credibility trial.
If you start a conversation or a video or an email by saying, just so you know, I used AI for some of this, you immediately sound defensive. You are framing your work as suspect. Before you even begin, you're inviting scrutiny.
It's like walking into a room and saying, I promise I didn't steal this jacket.
Exactly. Everyone is going to assume you stole the jacket. You have introduced the idea of theft into the room.
So what do you do instead? Lie about it.
No, you use context setting. This is a key distinction. Describe the function, not the tooling.
Give me an example. Role play it for me. What's the bad way and the good way?
Okay, bad version, the disclaimer. Here's a summary I wrote. I use ChatGPT to help me with the structure, so sorry if it's weird.
Yeah, I immediately trust that less. I feel like you're apologizing for it.
Good version, context setting. Here are some notes from my public notebook. I treat this like a sketchbook. It's messy, it's exploratory, and I'm just thinking out loud.
This is my sketchbook. I like that. Nobody expects a sketchbook to be perfect or to have been created without tools.
And nobody asks if you used a ruler or freehanded it. The tool becomes irrelevant because the context is exploration, not authority. You aren't claiming to be the New York Times. You're claiming to be a guy thinking out loud in his notebook.
That shifts the expectation completely. But that leaves one big hole. Credibility. If we aren't impressing people with our instant recall anymore, if we can't do the party trick of reciting facts, how do we prove we know what we're talking about?
This is one of my favorite parts of the analysis. The source argues that we are moving toward new credibility signals. In the old world, intelligence equaled recall. If you could quote the statute from memory, you were the best lawyer.
And in the new world,
In a world where AI can recall anything instantly, recall is cheap. It's commodity. The new credibility is retrieval of the handle.
the handle, we talked about that earlier.
You don't need to recite the content. You need to know where it lives. You need to know the shape of the idea. You need to know the taxonomy. You need to be a good librarian.
And the source mentions a specific phrase. It calls it the new PhD.
Yes, the sentence. I don't want to oversimplify this.
I don't want to oversimplify this. That's the power move. That sounds like hedging.
Think about it. In an age of hot takes, TikTok snippets, and instant AI answers, who is the most trustworthy person in the room?
The person who hesitates. The person who says, it's actually more complicated than that.
Exactly. That sentence signals restraint. It signals that you acknowledge complexity. It signals that you are aware of tensions and nuances that the AI might miss. The person who says, it's complicated and I want to be careful, is the one who actually signals human intelligence. They're showing you the shape of their thinking.
It's about showing the shape of the idea rather than pretending to hold the whole archive in your head.
And finally, giving yourself permission to forget. The source suggests Max and all of us adopt this internal permission slip. I don't try to hold it all in my head. That's kind of the point.
Reframing forgetfulness as design, not deficiency, that is powerful. I built this system so that I could forget. It's a feature, not a bug.
I put the boxes in the storage unit so that I could dance in the living room.
I want to touch on one last thing before we wrap up, the idea of identity. Because Max isn't just archiving facts about Rome or physics, he is archiving parts of himself. He talks about sub-personalities.
This gets a little trippy, but it's really cool. This connects to the concept of pluralism. Max uses sub-personalities, internal checks and balances, to look at issues from different angles. One part of him might hate a certain political idea, another part might see the value in it.
And the AI helps mediate between these parts. It's like a therapist for his internal committee.
It acts as the moderator, yeah. But broader than that, this connects to moral pluralism. The idea that multiple good faith approaches to being human can coexist. In an identity sense, it is okay to be plural, to contain parts with different values, rather than having to be a single flat brand.
We are so used to the personal brand idea, where you have to be consistent. You have to be the tech guy or the politics guy. You have to have a single, coherent take.
And pluralism says, it is okay to hold beliefs provisionally. This is where I land today. It is okay to be messy. It is okay to disagree with yourself from 3 years ago. That's called growth.
This helps with the disagreement aspect with others, too. Max worries about conflict, about people attacking him.
The source distinguishes between healthy disagreement and harmful disagreement.
What's the difference? Disagreement is disagreement, right?
Healthy disagreement is, I wouldn't do it that way, but I see why you do. It preserves dignity. It acknowledges that different people have different constraints, different needs, different apartments.
I wouldn't use AI to write my diary, but I see why you, with your specific pressures, need to.
Exactly. Harmful disagreement is identity policing.
No.
You are fake. You are lazy. You are immoral because you use this tool. It's an attack on the person, not the method.
The source encourages the listener to adopt an attitude where disagreement doesn't equal moral failure.
And this all comes together to redefine authenticity. We usually think authenticity means doing everything yourself or being raw and unfiltered. But the source defines it as alignment between values, intent, and action.
So you can collaborate with AI and still be authentic as long as it aligns with your intent to understand the world more deeply.
Yes. And conversely, you can write alone with a pen and paper and be completely inauthentic if you are just performing for an audience or trying to signal your virtue. Authenticity is about the honesty of the process, not the absence of tools.
That is a huge shift in perspective. It really changes the game because it moves the goalposts from performance to intention.
It shifts us from the old world view of intelligence, where effort equals suffering and recall equals smarts, to a new world,
where intelligence equals management and effort equals care.
That's it. Effort is care. Caring enough to use the best tools to think clearly and honestly.
So we have gone from the anxiety of being called slop, through the panic of the fried ram, all the way to a new definition of humane cognition. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. We started with the fear of the second brain being a cheat code, and we found that it's actually a survival mechanism.
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that image of the apartment versus the storage unit. I need to stop trying to cram furniture into my mental living room. I really need to give myself permission to put things in storage.
Let the living room be for living. Let the storage unit do the heavy lifting.
And don't apologize for having a storage unit.
Never apologize for load-bearing infrastructure. You wouldn't apologize for the foundation of your house.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? The source leaves us with a final, provocative thought. Staying humane in a complex world is already an achievement.
That really resonates. We spend so much time trying to be productive or impressive. But maybe the real goal is just to stay humane, to keep your curiosity alive, to keep your compassion intact, even if that means offloading the memory work to a machine.
So, here's the question we want you to mull over. Are you judging your own mental RAM by outdated standards? Are you beating yourself up for forgetting things that you shouldn't be trying to remember in the first place?
And in your own conversations, are you looking for the new credibility? The person who admits complexity, the person who says, I don't want to oversimplify this, or are you still dazzled by the person who just talks the fastest?
Something to think about next time you reach for your phone to tech effect. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
See you next time.